Welcome back to AI the Podcast, everybody. I'm Virginia Huling, here as always with my partner in crime, David Maples. And David, we're just going to jump right in, man. It's getting wild out there. This has been, I think since the moment we stopped filming last week for this podcast, it's been like story, drama. It's been a
really
wild
was.
week.
And what's interesting is it wasn't one giant breakthrough. It was a whole chain of breakthroughs. And when you line them up, it tells you exactly where the industry is heading. We've got companies worth more than entire countries filing to go public. One of them spending $60 billion. The ink is still drying on the IPO, and the government literally pulling the plug on an AI model overnight, and a study that quietly upends a lot of assumptions about which AI tools you should actually be paying for.
All right. So our whole goal today, just like every week, is to help you, our audience, business owners, the operator, the person just trying to keep up, make sense of all of this without needing a computer science degree. We're going to connect the dots to help you see the bigger picture. We may or may not use Game of Thrones as our base. So grab some coffee. We got some articles rolled into one big story arc. And by the end of it, you're going to have a much better understanding of what is going on in the world of AI, more than most people in the boardroom. So let's get going. David, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So starting off, just after we finished taping the last episode, Reuters broke that OpenAI officially filed for their IPO, their initial public offering, just after Anthropic agreed to do theirs. And then last Friday, of course, SpaceX hit the markets with the largest IPO, I think, in history. But OpenAI's IPO is also targeting $1 trillion. So basically, when you combine SpaceX, Anthropic, and now OpenAI, you've got basically 3 companies trying to hit the market, all worth $1 trillion or more. That has never happened before in the history of Wall Street or in the history of the planet. And the most telling line was from OpenAI's own statement, which was almost like a shrug. And I quote, "It may be a while because there are things we want to do that are likely easier as a private company."
Okay, so wait, run me through that again. The company eyeing $1 trillion IPO is in no particular hurry. Why? Is because the money is already flowing to them privately. OpenAI is doing about $2 billion now a month in revenue, and with over 900 million weekly users.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of a catch to that, right? And that's the point that every business owner needs to hear. The bankers in this particular article are very nervous. One of them at Davidson put it perfectly. I think it's Gil Loria said that what OpenAI does not want to do is for the public market capital to exhaust itself. So there's a limited amount of funds out in the market at any given time to invest in these things, right? And if all of a sudden, if all that goes, so if you're the last one to the dance, nobody wants to dance with you all of a sudden because they're already spending their money on the other 2 people.
Well, and we talked last week about Google trying to spike other people's deals to take some of that investor money. Yeah. So this is this is where you're starting to see some of these continuations of what happened last week and 2 weeks prior flowing into the dramas of today.
And I think, when we said Game of Thrones, it really does feel like that's a pretty apt analogy. Like, it's like the Iron Bank gets its due. Like, everybody who's involved in this, the Iron Bank is Goldman Sachs, by the way, in case you're not paying attention.
Yeah, well, but I kind of feel like all these CEOs are Peter Baelish, so.
Yeah, there's a lot about that. Chaos is a ladder, right? But the 3, as you pointed out, these 3 people going public could drain the well for everybody else. So there's a lot of oxygen that's going to be vacuumed out of the room and just go to these 3 companies. And, one other thing that should kind of stop you in its tracks in the OpenAI press release was that they told their investors it didn't expect to be profitable until 2030.
Okay. All right. Wait a minute. Okay, so one more time. $1 trillion valuation on a company that won't make money for 4 more years. So when we start to hear the word bubble getting tossed around, this is why. These valuations are bets on the future, not the present.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that going around. So, and I know that we were going to talk about, I guess we need to talk about SpaceX next. It's not really like something we were definitely going to look at here, but SpaceX went public on Friday, and I think it's important for this next article. So SpaceX went public. It came online, I think, at $135 a share. It closed around like $165. So basically, SpaceX had a valuation of almost $2 trillion, which, as you pointed out, like OpenAI won't be profitable to 2030. But when you start lumping in like Twitter, which got acquired by XAI, which got acquired by SpaceX.
Yeah.
I think if there's one thing that Elon Musk is not afraid of, it's not turning a profit. Yeah, and now he's worth $1 trillion of the company out there. But then he turns around 3 days later and they agreed, just breaking today, they officially agreed to buy the AI coding agent Cursor. The operator of Cursor is a company called AnySphere, which most people probably haven't heard of, but you probably heard of Cursor. And they're acquiring Cursor. It's one of the most popular AI coding tools out there for $60 billion. And, this is just days after, they went public.
So the article itself notes that they were behind in AI coding. So remember we talked a couple weeks ago about some of these acquisitions that Musk was doing, and it's like, what do you think he's trying to do? And I was like, yeah, he's trying to get to Mars. Like this, he's starting to acquire more of a foothold in the AI coding market, where so far he's been lagging. So instead of building his way out front, they just, used the front runner and bought it before the price ran away.
Well, the crazy part here is that, the easy thing to say is they IPO'd and they immediately went shopping, but that's actually not what happened here. Because if you were paying attention, a couple of months ago, SpaceX quietly acquired the rights to Cursor. They agreed to originally buy, they said they'd get to look at their code base for, I think it was $10 billion at the time, and they had a year to option it at $50 billion. Now, I got this wrong. I was guessing that what was going to happen was that Elon was going to kind of shake them down for a better price point a year later, but they just raised a crazy amount of money. And yeah, the crown jewel in everything that Anthropic's been doing has been an enterprise coding agent. That's really been the thing. And so that's a big deal.
So it's really about where the money is. So 2 things for our listeners. First, if software touches your business at all, and it obviously it touches everybody's business, AI coding is the application that the biggest players on earth are betting tens of billions of dollars. You've heard us talk about, this is the prize, everybody's going for it. And that's your signal to at least try it out. And we have talked a lot about putting guardrails around that. So go back and listen to, go back and listen to earlier episodes, like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with things. But the tools are changing hands fast. Okay. So if you were using Cursor this week, you are now effectively using a SpaceX and XAI software set and are now one of their customers. So be aware of who owns your technology stack. This is really important.
So keep that coding wars theme kind of in your back pocket right now, because they all want to win coding because it's got some of the best return on investment as far as what we can see right now. But the company in our next 4 stories we're going to go, it's all about Anthropic this week. It's Anthropic. And by the way, I want to point out something.
They've had a long week.
Well, it's not just that. If one thing about OpenAI and Anthropic is they kept stepping on each other. They would announce something and it's the next day it's but we just did this. But we just did this. And it's they were always holding something back. But Anthropic kind of sucked all the oxygen out of the room this week because they have the best coding agent on the market. And while Musk and company, SpaceX, is spending $60 billion to basically, hopefully, put them back in the race. And let's be honest, XAI has not been a serious coding player in this market. By the way, their models are pretty good. We've used them. They're decent. But they haven't been a serious contender for kind of the crown. That's kind of been run away with in the past few months by Anthropic. But Anthropic has kind of had whiplash. They released their most powerful coding application on the market, and then they had massive problems. They made some mistakes with it releasing it, and then it gets pulled off the market just 3 days later. And same battlefield, very opposite weeks for what's happening for them.
Okay, so the timeline here is Anthropic. Remember just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Mythos and how it was the code breaker and it was going to be super dangerous. And it's found all of these vulnerabilities in software architecture that a lot of things are built on. So we couldn't get that. Then they re-engineered a piece of it to create Fable. Is that right? They took out certain pieces of it.
They put guardrails on it.
Okay, they put guardrails on it.
Guardrails.
Okay, guardrails, sure. And then released Fable. Now, David and I were super excited because we got to play with it for a little while, and we had all these plans, and we were ramping everything up, and then wham, Fable's gone, and we're what just happened? This was 24 hours. What just happened? And lo and behold, well, it turns out that Fable got pulled. The United States government stepped in and said, this is too risky. We didn't have access anymore. David, what happened?
Well, there's a lot. Let me rewind the story a little bit. So Mythos was considered all the press around it, everything that Dario Amodei was saying was that Mythos was too dangerous to be let live. Couldn't give it to regular people, and they weren't going to allow it to be released in the market. So they kind of nerfed the model and put a whole bunch of guardrails on it and released it as titled as Fable 5. However, when the model gets released last, I think, Wednesday, and we used it. We actually used it a lot, but a lot of people had trouble. Something I was using it on for just basic testing of an application that I was building to not let Windows auto update my machines. It flagged me for being like a security violator or security risk, and it rolled back to a weaker model, and it would do that automatically. There was some kid, like an 8th grade biology question about like what is mitochondria, and somebody screenshot it, and it was saying I can't answer that question. I mean, that's like middle school biology, right? And then one of these cancer researchers at Jackson Laboratory, Dara Unatamaz, she tried it out and it refused everything. And his quote is, I can't even say the word cancer or the word hello, because it found out that he was a cancer researcher and it wouldn't answer anything about it because he thought he was trying to do something bad for like bioweapons. And it's just because it knew that he was a cancer researcher, right? And he's trying to check it out for himself. And that's pretty bad when a cancer researcher gets locked out by the word cancer. Now, to Anthropic's credit, they basically owned it. They said that a hidden safeguard is harder to probe and work around. They made the wrong trade-off. They blah, 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 the normal stuff they did. And they apologized for not getting the balance right. That's what they all say. They didn't get the balance right. But what is buried in the apology that Anthropic released was they were secretly degrading their own product. And some different experts came out and said that this is one of the first times that AI has rolled out a guardrail, and there's been a universal disdain by researchers. It's led to a lot of, quite honestly, justified anger.
So this is business owners. This is your listen up moment. If you are building parts of your workflow on any AI model, you are now exposed to a brand new risk. Invisible capability changes. Just like David and I, like we had a bunch of workflows set up and we were testing out some things, and you get a couple hours in and then it's just the rug's kind of pulled out from under you. So the model that you tested and approved last month for your workflow might quietly behave differently this month, where there's no change log or no updates and no warnings. So it's really pushing back on us as humans to stay up to date with the terms of service and how these models are being updated and pushed out.
So why don't you drop the bombshell? What happened Friday at like 5 p.m.?
Well, all of this is really just kind of building up for it's just kind of the spark for what's coming. All of those aggressive guardrails exist. And remember a couple, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking about how, oh yeah, all right, Anthropic's worried about unmanned drones killing people and handing over the reins to AI, and maybe we should have guardrails, and maybe the government should be involved. And guess what? Boom, you got what you wished for. And I don't really say that in a negative troll internet kind of way, because a lot of that is coming through. The reason that Fable was pulled from the users is because the United States government stepped in. They had a chance to review the software and decided that they did not want anybody from other countries to have access to it. Anthropic said, well, we can't do that. We have people from other countries who work for us, and that's really kind of impossible to do. So everybody has to have it limited.
Wait, let me interrupt there. What, the government just did this on their own? No one tipped them off? Nobody went up to the White House and said, hey, I just want to let you know, we think there's a problem here.
No. Yeah, actually it was Amazon. Amazon got a hold of Fable and decided to do a whole bunch of different tests with it and found that they could jailbreak some things that they really shouldn't be able to jailbreak. And so they called up the government and said, hey, this is a problem. And the government responded. So
Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon. Now, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Amazon an investor in Anthropic? Don't they have Dario's cell phone number? So instead of calling the people you're investing in, Peter Baelish, I'm sorry, Andy Jassy, you decided instead to trot up to the White House and say, hey, this thing's really a problem. You should pull stuff.
Well, under the banner of national security, this is that they probably felt like that was an important step to take. But was the danger real? And this is what's really important for context, because like anything, while the drama sells, a respected security expert, Andrew Morris of Gray Noise Intelligence, said that the vulnerabilities were, quote, still a long way from dangerous cybersecurity.
Yeah, but here's the thing that is the mixed up, tangled ball of nasty yarn, right? This whole industry, Amazon's a major investor in Anthropic. It supplies their chips and it competes with them. And so one of Anthropic's own backers, the company that handed the government the ammunition that shut down the product weeks before its IPO. Like, okay, here's the thing. There's a lot of times you could have spiked the ball here, but they're just weeks before their IPO and you're doing that. So your investor, your partner, and your competitor. Kind of a weird throuple there, right? I don't know what that would be, but it's nasty. They're all the same company. When Amazon was asked about it, the spokesman was as candid as you can possibly be while blocking everything. As a leading cloud provider that serves a large number of private and public sector customers, and I quote, "It's not uncommon for governments to seek our counsel on potential security risks. When they occur, we don't share the details of these discussions." Wait a minute. They sought you out, or did Andy Jassy trot his happy ass up to the White House and let them know what was up? Because it sounds like the other one happened.
Chaos is
I don't know. So the danger isn't finding the bug. A lot of tools do that, right? Is that this one can write it as a weapon? Is that the line that got crossed here?
The government's response was the bluntest tool available. Take it away from everybody.
Well, they only barred foreign access to the models, right?
No, you cannot bar foreign access to the models because there are foreign people that work within Anthropic, and you cannot just arbitrarily not let people access something on the internet based on who they are. So companies all over the world are using these tools to find and fix their own software vulnerabilities. They all lost access overnight through no fault
We were
of their own.
too. We were using it to help find our own vulnerabilities. It's the first thing we did. We got access to it. We went on a whole bunch of the software that we've been building and selling in the marketplace. We went online and we were trying to see, like, okay, are there backdoors or the things we've missed? Because that's what it's supposedly good at, right? Luckily, we didn't really find a lot. It did fix one bug in a piece of software that we've had coders working on for, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. And that was awesome. And then all of a sudden we get this weird line that says Fable 5 is no longer accessible in your account. And I think the single most important kind of operational lesson is something we've been talking about. We've talked about it on the show. I talk about it on my podcast, The Buck Stops Here. We've had multiple discussions about this, how you need to be vendor agnostic, because right now is that a single vendor dependency is now a geopolitical risk. If a government like the United States government decides that you are a danger, they can have a zero. They just literally turned off everything we were in. We're in the middle of coding stuff. We have stuff that broken. We have stuff that we've had to revert back. And it's not like a massive issue because we've got backups in triplicate that happen on a regular basis. But it's a mere thing. And there was no warning, and it happened in just a matter of hours. It was just shut off.
And there is an analyst within this piece from the R Street Institute, and he really called out the bigger picture. He called this a significant escalation of the politicalization of AI and centralization to control over advanced computation in this country. That's a lot of Asians going on in there, but hold on to the phrase centralization of control, because that's the theme of this episode.
Is Amazon just going to stand by and let the government do this? So why don't you tell me what happened next?
Anthropic's going to fight back. So let's see. I think the article it came out a couple days ago on Anthropic's official blog. Their statement on the U.S. government directive to suspend access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5. So after hearing 3 outside accounts, it's worth hearing the company in its own words. They confirmed that they're complying. They are shutting both models down, but they have made it very clear, okay, get this, quote, "We must abruptly disable Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all of our customers to ensure compliance." That word abruptly, customers around the world, lights out. So like we said, the rug just got pulled out. There was no runway. And their core argument is about proportionality. Listen to this quote. "We disagree that the finding of a narrow potential jailbreak should be the cause for recalling a commercial model deployed to hundreds of millions of people. If this standard was applied across the industry, we believe it would essentially halt all new model deployments for all frontier model providers." So Anthropic pushed back pretty hard. It sounds like they kind of nodded towards the duplicitous nature of this, but
to Anthropic's credit. Now, by the way, Anthropic did point out, they said that the same jailbreaks used on Fable 5 could be used on GPT 5.5, and you get the same kind of results. It is. So this is why I think it's the Game of Thrones-ish thing. Is like, it feels like this is, I'm sorry, this feels like someone's trying to spike stuff before the IPO to update it, just like Google did a couple weeks ago, with literally like announcing they're going to try to suck some more oxygen out of the room with their own selling of stock to raise
Yep,
money.
we talked about
Right.
that.
So we talked about that. Right. And now Amazon's putting their thumb on the scale. I think maybe it's because I wonder if they're all worried that they can't catch up. Everybody knows. OpenAI, Sam Altman said himself that they did not have a model on par with Fable 5. And so I think maybe there's some real fear there that maybe that Anthropic really is ahead of everybody else. And by the way, I'm just going to say, of the companies out there right now, I'm a fan of Anthropic. I like that they've at least had some kind of a stand on this. And they do seem to be principled. They said, and I quote, that we believe the government should have the ability to block unsafe deployments as part of the statutory process that is transparent, fair, clear, and grounded in technical facts. This action does not adhere to those principles.
And they're not, like, let's be clear, they're not fighting the principle, they're fighting the process. And when you think of Anthropic, they were the first ones to say, hey, we have problems with our AI being used for weapons of war. This is a textbook crisis community playbook for any business. You comply immediately, you communicate transparently, and you apologize for the disruption to customers, but you state your disagreement clearly and you explain your reasoning.
It does kind of bring up what is probably the deepest problem of all in AI. So it's the same thing with any kind of weapon. It's things that have dual use. Fertilizer can be used to make a bomb, but it's also how it's how they grow crops, right? They call it dual use. And the same capability that can find a vulnerability so you can fix it is the same capability that finds a vulnerability so that someone else can exploit it. And Anthropic even points this out. Stuff is used every day by the defenders who keep systems safe. There's no clear line between good use and bad use. And it's a puzzle that just, frankly, nobody's solved.
Which, interestingly enough, brings us to the part where all of this comes together and where Anthropic's own words come back to haunt
There's
it.
a lot of Schadenfreude. Like, there's a lot of people like...
This is the internet trolls.
There's a lot of internet trolls, like, literally pulling up buckets of popcorn. They're like, Dario, you jerk. You said this. This is what you've got. And
I don't know. I think the irony here is almost painful. It's, for years, Anthropic built the entire brand on being the safe one. We saw Sam Altman kind of cowboying it up everywhere, technologically speaking. It was kind of crazy. But Anthropic was the company that had the loudest warnings about AI's danger. They literally introduced their Mythos model by saying it was too dangerous to fully release. Columnist Dan Gallagher nailed the trap that they built for themselves. He said, Anthropic has made a habit of sounding warnings about AI's danger, but Anthropic itself is creating some of the world's most powerful and potentially dangerous models.
I do want to say something here because I feel like a lot of the people out there saying that Dario and company, Anthropic, it's their own fault for this. I want to point out something very clear. Dario has been very consistent with his messaging. Maybe he's film-wronging a little too much, but if you look at people like Yoshua Bengio, who's one of the three godfathers of AI, he said that, there's not a zero chance that this destroys all the humans, right? He said this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 5%. He's got kids, and kids live here on Earth, and because of that, he cares about that, right? Jeffrey Hinton leaves Google and says that he regrets working on AI because he feels like he may have let a genie out of the bottle and he regrets his life's work, right? So, but Dario and company, they're the original safety people who left OpenAI to start with. And by the way, I'm not saying that he's not being a little bit of a fearmonger. What I am saying is that a lot of the other hype bros, like everybody else, like nobody said it's going to be like, they're all like, man, no big deal, dude. It'll play volleyball for you and make your tea and you won't have to work anymore.
But see, you also got to remember though, and I agree with what you're saying. I respect Anthropic. So far, I respect Anthropic. I'm not so sure about everybody else. I don't know. We'll see. But Anthropic has always kind of been, we're the safe one, we're the secure one, we're the ethical one. The ethical one really, 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 really matters because all the fun words that popped into our vernacular when this stuff first came around, like bias and hallucinations. We don't talk about that stuff as much anymore. Bias has kind of been forgotten for what it can do now. And it's still incredibly important that ethically we get this right as a species. But when you plant your flag on that hill, that is the standard that you will be held to, and your competitors and your regulators will use it against you. And I think this is exactly what that is. These guys are chasing a prize that is still kind of forming itself, and they're going to throw sand in each other's game as much as they can, and it's going to, I don't know.
So this brings us to the second article that we want to talk about in this piece of the podcast. It's from today, entitled, inside the White House's newest AI clash with Anthropic, and it zooms out to the question every government on Earth is now facing. Columnist Damian Paletta writes, artificial intelligence is being developed much faster than the government can comprehend. The challenge is whether to slow it or accelerate it. But first, you have to understand it.
And that right there is the entire reason that the show exists. The understand it part. But Paletta also names the uncomfortable power at the center of all of this. And he asks, how does a government navigate the slippery slope between creating guardrails and picking winners and losers? And he warns that these decisions could, quote, ultimately determine who survives and who falters in a multi-trillion-dollar
Because when a
sprint.
government decides which AI models are safe enough to operate, it isn't simply regulating safety. It is effectively choosing those market winners and losers. And to show as personal this has gotten, I'm going to quote the Defense Secretary. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's War Secretary. I don't know what he is now.
It's the Department of War
Hegseth
now.
said Anthropic has delivered a masterclass in arrogance and betrayal, as well as a textbook case of how not to do business with the United States government or the Pentagon. That's not a regulator's measured tone. That's personal, and it tells you how deep that rift runs. So the takeaway from business owners is sobering but real. AI market winners may get decided in Washington and not just in the marketplace. The best technology, the one that we probably need, or the one we probably should deserve, may not be the winner. And the most politically favored one might. Don't bet your business on a single politically exposed vendor.
All right. So, after all that drama about power and danger and politics, let's land the plane somewhere that you can actually use some of this stuff. So, in this article in the journal Nature Medicine, general purpose large language models outperform specialized clinical AI tools on medical benchmarks. Researchers ran an independent blind study. They pitted two specialized purpose-built medical AI tools against three general purpose models, the same big names that we've been talking about all episode, and had 12 blinded doctors, not blind doctors, but, double blind study kind of stuff. They had 12 doctors score them on real physician questions. The results kind of upends the conventional wisdom. The assumption had always been that a narrow tool built for your industry beats a generalist. This study found the opposite. Quote, frontier LLMs outperformed clinical AI tools in all three evaluations. Clinical AI tools performed comparably to auto-enabled Google Search AI Overview on the RCQ.
So let's let that hit home for just a second. The expensive, specialized medical AI scored about the same as the free Google search.
I am never Googling symptoms
And for
again,
any
ever.
business owner who's been quoted a premium for an industry-specific AI tool, that should make you sit up. And the researchers are quite blunt on why that matters. It turns out that AI clinical tools may carry institutional legitimacy, and they're likely safe for routine use, but the results from the paper are clear that they do not perform in a superior manner to frontier models on knowledge, communication, or clinical alignment.
All right, I want to do a marketing definition section where we define institutional legitimacy. It just means it looks official and
Well, it's the same thing.
But
A lot of businesses are relying on Microsoft Copilot, which is arguably one of the worst AIs out there on the marketplace.
Perfect setup, because looking trusted and being better are two very different things. So before you sign that expensive contract for some industry-specific AI vendor, please request an independent head-to-head test against a general purpose model that on your actual
Now, the
tasks.
lawyer in me wants to come out and say this for one thing first. Look, there are legitimate reasons. If you're in legal or in healthcare, like personally identifiable information, HIPAA compliance things, legal rules around your thing. If you're in the financial industry, there's certain things you're not allowed to do. But the challenge with this is not that you're going to violate those terms, is that you're using a lesser, inferior product. Like the actual clinical outcomes, the advice you're being given is just factually. And that's the thing. I get it on trust. I really do. And the study warns that, and I quote, industry-created benchmarks may systematically favor the systems developed by their creators. So don't trust the vendor's own scorecard. I can't say that enough. You have to get out there and play with any of these models, test it yourself, work on your own in your own conditions. One of the reasons we were really bummed out when Fable got pulled is because we were using it. Like, it wasn't necessarily better across the board. I found two cases in particular in the day or two we got to use it that were not as good. But it did fix a bug that we had been trying to track down for 4 weeks. And we kept thinking we were clear, and it fixed it in literally like 45 minutes. And I was like, holy crap. Like, that's the thing. But you have to test these things on your own, in your own work, in your own conditions. It can't just be good in the lab. It has to be good in the real world.
And that does kind of provide some benefit to the rest of us. So while the giants are fighting over these trillion-dollar valuations and national security, the practical question for your business is pretty simple and very down to earth. Which tool actually does the job for you? This week's answer, like David said, test it yourself, because the pricey specialized option might be losing to a generalist or even to free. So let's bring all of this home. Wow. If you zoom out on this week, here's our theme. AI just grew up. It went from a curiosity in a lab, from a novel kind of internet toy we can all play with, to a public market, national security, multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Trillion with a T.
And with a T. And it's messy. It's very, very messy. The most powerful tools are now powerful enough that a government will yank them offline overnight. And the biggest players are spending $60 billion at a clip that is staggering to keep up with, just to own the territory.
The single lesson for every single business owner listening to this right now out there in the marketplace is not to panic. Don't get panic. Subscribe to AI, the podcast, so we can help you find your way through this incredible amount of information that's coming at you every week. You're drinking from a fire hose. Heck, we live and work in it, and for us, it can be overwhelming. But your thing is not to panic, to get deliberate. 3 things you can take with yourself this week. 1, don't build your whole operation on a single AI tool you don't control. I've said this on the Buck Stops Here for the past 6 weeks, maybe the past year, and you don't do that. And that plug ain't pulled, and it just this week did. And it got pulled on us too. 2, be careful what you promise as a brand, because Anthropic just did a masterclass in showing us how your greatest strength can become your liability, your Achilles heel. And 3, this is the hopeful one, test your tools yourself. Because as that Nature article proved, the expensive, hyped option isn't automatically the best. Sometimes a simple, general purpose tool is just better.
Actually, I'm going to add one more to that, David. While you're working with these tools and you are learning how you want this to work in your business, I think it's important to start framing up how you want your business to work with AI, and start pulling that down in writing and in policies, so that both you, your office, your employees, everybody's on the same page about what's allowed and what's not. We've been doing a lot of work lately with AI governance, and it's not really surprising to me, but it's concerning to me how many businesses that I've been talking to that kind of have a framework, but when it comes to really protecting your business from liabilities and data leaks, there's not enough detail understood and written out within your company's policy. So if you've got questions about that, I would say like and subscribe. But I'm also going to add on, give us a holler and let us sit down and walk through this as a consult with you, because there's a lot of ground.
The funny thing is, you came back from several of those client meetings last week. So shout out to Virginia here. She did, I think, 3 meetings on AI and governance last week, and she came back, and two of them were very sophisticated clients. I won't say what industry they're in or whatever it is, but they are credentialed industries that people look at for advice. Let's just say that, right? And you came back, and the incongruities and things that are contradictions within their own brands and their business were just, they have no idea. And it's like,
and then that's to be expected. This is all brand new for so many people. And it's like, okay, it's like walking out in a giant field full of snow. Somebody who's used to that can see the different colors within the snow, the different shades of blue or the different shades of gray that tell them what the landscape looks like. But to somebody brand new, it just looks like snow. It's just white everywhere, and it's cold, and you don't know where you're going. You're just going to go straight. You have no idea that there's ice out there. So here's my ask. If this episode helped you connect a few dots, do us a favor hit that like button, subscribe so that you never miss a week, because believe me, it's only going to get more wild.
And share this with one other business owner in your life who's trying to figure out what AI means to them and their business seriously. That one share helps us more than anything else, and it helps you stay ahead of the curve. Drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us which stories surprised you the most. We read them, and we'll bring the best ones into next week's show.
All right. So for David Maples and myself, I'm Virginia Huling. Thanks for listening, guys. Stay curious, stay human.
Take care,
See you
everybody.
next week. That's a wrap for this episode of AI the Podcast. To make sure you never miss an update on the future of tech and business, hit that like and subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. This show is made possible by the support of listeners like you. So if you want to help us grow this community, drop us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.